Hi, my name's Trever Shirin, and today we're going to talk a little bit. And this time we're going to talk a little, and I wanted to talk to you. Let's talk about failure. Now, there are a number of ways to view failure, and I think depending on how we grew up and the conversations that happened at that time, we might have very different opinions about what failure looks like. We might have ideas about failure that it is detestable and to be avoided at all costs. We might have the other side that's informed by idioms about Newton that say failure is just learning and you should be failing and you should be happy with failure. And I think what's tricky is that there are actually some truths to both of these sides, even though they feel so drastically separated from each other. I think naturally as human beings, we long to avoid failing. We long to avoid doing things wrong or getting things wrong. This is beneficial to our development as a species, to our development as a society, to our development personally. And so it makes sense that we would have strong feelings towards failure. But I think one of the things that is most impactful to our experience of failure is our definition of failure. What I mean by this is that sometimes we don't have clear boundaries or definitions around what qualifies as a failure, or why does this event qualify as a failure when this event doesn't. Now, you might be listening and thinking very logically, well, failure is just not succeeding. I don't disagree with you. I also don't think that that's a very helpful definition, because then we have to figure out what it means to succeed. And does our definition of success have room for little failures or mistakes that allow us to achieve that success? This is really that idiom of Newton creating the light bulb. I just realized that it wasn't Newton, it's Edison, who failed 1,000 times.
Thomas Edison.
So Thomas Edison, the idiom goes, or not really an idiom, I guess. It was a conversation that somebody had asked him about failing to make a light bulb 1,000 times. So he had 1,000 prototypes that did not work. And when asked how it felt to fail 1,000 times, he responded, it wasn't failure. I just found 1,000 ways that this doesn't work. And we use that in our society as a helpful way of changing the perspective of failure to be one that speaks to how we have to be able to make mistakes. We have to be able to fall in order to get up. I think that phrase too, like failure is not getting back up. Well, there are other times when maybe getting up is the wrong thing to do. I'm a big fan of the idea of sunk cost bias, which is where we've invested so much of ourselves or our time or our money into something that isn't working. And because we've invested so much time into this, we don't want to give up. It's kind of like going to dinner and you eat all but a couple bites of your food and you start feeling very full. And you know that if you finish those last few bites, you're probably going to feel sick. But because you've eaten so much so far and there's not enough to bring home for leftovers, you are likely to eat those 2 bites, even if it's going to make you sick, only because you've already eaten so much already. And so while these different ways that we talk about failure in society are helpful or can be helpful, I think what is vitally important for us to do, and honestly, more work than just listening to some of these conversations in society, is to have a clear understanding of what failure means to us. Now, this also means having a clear idea of what success means to us. Sometimes it is helpful to be able to define something by its opposite. We should come up with a definition of success that is individualized to us and purposeful for us. The American definition of success is to go to a good high school, get good grades, graduate, go to college, get a good job, maybe get married, have a few kids, work up the corporate ladder, retire and die. And most of us would view that maybe with a few additions of, become a millionaire, start your own company, be famous, whatever, win awards, all those things. That is successful. And I think, again, what's hard is that there's some truth to that. We do have some drives as human beings to be able to succeed in those ways, to be known in the way of fame or acknowledgments or accomplishments, to be able to pursue security and safety in having a good job that we're able to work up in. But I also think it's so important for us to be able to decide for ourselves, what is success? What does it mean for me to live a successful life? And this might feel very much like writing a mission and vision statement for your life. I believe that a successful life for Trever is to be able to help individuals in the midst of their pain to mend brokenness and to guide them to hope and offer presence in the midst of pain. Now, that feels pretty fluffy, probably, because there's a lot of fluff to it, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of general ideas. But I can turn to different elements of my life and I can look at them and say, okay, am I living up to this idea of success? If so, I can believe that I'm being successful in this, even if it doesn't feel like that. And then I need to reevaluate, why doesn't it feel that way? And it might be because I have a construed definition of failure where I'm not making the money or being famous or having people give me accolades for those things. That's not part of my definition of success, but somehow it's wound itself into my definition of failure, where failure is the lack of those things. And so for you, what is your definition of failure? What is your definition of success? How generalized is that where somebody else could take it and run with it? I think something really beautiful about this idea is my definition of success is my own. And there are very few, if any, people on this planet that will thrive more under my definition of success than one that they're able to create for themselves. I think also in our definition of failure, we're not trying to avoid the feelings that come up when we fail. Those are natural experiences that we have as human beings because we don't like to fail. And so it's not about making a definition where failure is just never trying anything. I think that feels true. There's that kernel of truth, but at the heart of it, we're kind of avoiding feeling like we failed. And I don't think that that's appropriate either. When we experience failure, it's not always a bad thing. It drives us. It motivates us. We don't like it so much that we want to do something different. And I think that that's really beneficial. I think we also need to have skills in place and people in place to help us in those moments when failure feels unsurmountable. But one of the things that is so necessary to this is to be able to understand what failure actually means for us. And so that might mean that failure is having to go it alone. It might mean that failure is giving up out of discouragement. It might mean failure is giving up on hopes and dreams because they were too hard. When we develop this idea of failure, a clear definition of what it is, we can look at things that have failed with new eyes. We can look at projects that were passion projects for a time and didn't go where we wanted them to. Books that we wrote that never got finished. School that we pursued that we never accomplished. We can look at these and we can look at the circumstances around it, apply our definition of failure, and maybe see it as something that contributed to further success or something that contributed to our personal growth and development rather than dropping out or failing. I want to give a clear example of this. So this could be going to college and getting to your junior year and dropping out. And we can look at that and we could say, okay, why did we drop out? Well, I dropped out because it felt too hard. It didn't feel like I was able to accomplish it. And I was just so discouraged and felt so isolated. Okay. Those reasons don't have to necessarily mean failure. They might mean like you weren't in a place where you could continue school. Or maybe there's the addition of like, I did feel like I could accomplish it, but it was just so much work and I didn't have the motivation for it. And I just felt so discouraged. And so I just gave up on that. And I gave up on that hope and that dream. That might be failure. That might be an experience of failure. But also in our definition of failure, it doesn't have to mean that that's the end of the story. I think that oftentimes that idea of getting back up, fall 7 times, get up 8 or whatever it is helpful just because it doesn't allow failure to be the end. It allows failure to be part of the greater story as we're growing and learning. And I think that's really, really, really helpful. We might also look at the situation and we might say, I dropped out because it was so hard and I felt really discouraged. And at the same time, I found this partner that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, and we had to move in order to blah, 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 blah. And I was able to find this other career path that felt helpful to me or satisfying or passion filled for me. I don't know if we can look at that with our definition of failure and say, yeah, you failed at school. We look at it instead as a way that we have pursued our goals and continue to grow and have been adaptive in the midst of hard circumstances. And that is so vitally important. And that's another reason why we want to have a good definition of success as well. If success is graduating, we've failed. If success is pursuing relationship and doing things that are meaningful on this earth, I think it's pretty easy to look at that circumstance and say, yeah, we're pursuing success, even though I did drop out of college. You might be watching this and thinking it doesn't feel very concrete or very practical. There aren't things that you're able to take from this and just copy and paste into your definitions. And that's super purposeful. No definition is going to be as helpful to you as the one that you're able to create. And I think in order to create a positive and healthy and helpful definition of success and failure, you should be doing this with trusted individuals in your lives, people that care for you, people that love you, people that want to see you succeed in life in that definition. And so this might be family or definitely not family. This might be best friends. This might be partners. This could also be a counselor, a paid friend, as we like to call it sometimes, who's able to come into your experience and to hear you and to reflect back to you what they're hearing and to build this with you. My hope for you out of this video is that you are able to sit down and be honest with yourself about your feelings of success, your desire to be successful, and your fear of failure and the feelings and memories of having failed. And to be able to look at those and create a definition that is helpful for you moving forward, so that when you enter into situations that feel like they're just tinted with failure, you're able to look at them more clearly and say, yes, this is a place where failure is a possibility, or no, I don't see how this can fall into that definition of failure. And so I can go forward more confidently or more informed. And I know what I'm pursuing because I have an understanding of what it means to be successful. What will it look like at the end of my life to reflect on all that I've done and to say that was a life well lived? There's not a human being alive today who has not experienced failure, who has not struggled in feeling successful. This is part of the human experience, and it's okay, even though it hurts. And so I want to encourage you to go forward, to fail a lot and fail well, to make smarter mistakes, and to pursue a definition of success that helps you to thrive rather than decaying you with time.